Once upon a time, in a land not far from the forests of the river Niger, there was a small but proud village called Umuka. Umuka was no ordinary village. It was said that the gods themselves had divided its people into only two kinds, the very rich and the very poor. There were no middle grounds, no in-betweens. A man was either dining on roasted goat meat and drinking palm wine from a calabash, or he was going to bed hungry with nothing but hope in his stomach. And in this strange village, there lived two childhood friends. Their names were Obinna and Chike. Obinna was born into a wealthy family. His father owned large yam barns, acres of farmland, and herds of cattle that grazed lazily across the green hills. He never lacked for anything. He dressed in the finest woven wrappers, his sandals came from the best leather in the land, and his hut was bigger than 3 ordinary men's houses put together. Chike, on the other hand, was born poor. His father had died when he was very young, leaving only his mother, a small hut, and a piece of land too dry to grow anything meaningful. Chike grew up knowing hunger as a companion, but he also grew up with laughter, kindness, and a heart that refused to give in to bitterness. As children, they were inseparable. They climbed the same trees, swam in the same river, and shared stories under the moonlight. But as they grew older, the wide river of wealth separated them. Obinna, now a rich man, began to feel that Chike's poverty was a stain on his own honor. He still greeted Chike on the road, but in his heart, he no longer considered him a friend. One scorching afternoon, Chike left his mother's hut. His younger siblings were crying from hunger, and his mother's face was pale with worry. "Go, my son," she told him softly. "Look for work on someone's farm. Even if you are paid with just a tuber of yam, it will keep us alive for another day." With determination, Chike set out. He walked along the dusty red road of Umuka, his bare feet burning on the hot soil. As he walked, he whispered a prayer to the gods to grant him favor. Not long into his journey, he noticed a crowd gathered in the village square. Curious, he walked closer. At the center of the crowd stood a man, tall, dark, with a flowing robe that shimmered in the sunlight. He wore a cap decorated with cowrie shells, and in his hands he held a staff carved with strange symbols. The people clapped and gasped as the man performed magic, making fire appear from his palms, turning stones into kola nuts, and calling birds from the skies to land on his shoulders. Chike's eyes widened in amazement. He had never seen anything like this before. He wanted to stay and watch, but then he remembered his hungry family. He sighed and turned to leave. Just then, the magician's deep voice boomed. "Chike, son of Okafor, come forward." Chike froze. How did this man know his name? The crowd parted, and all eyes turned toward him. Slowly, nervously, Chike stepped forward. The magician smiled, his teeth white against his dark beard. He said, "I can make you rich, Chike. Richer than your wildest dreams." Chike blinked in disbelief. "Me? Rich? How?" The magician held out his hand. "Do you have any money on you?" Chike searched his pocket and brought out a few crumpled cowries, the little savings his mother had given him for food. The magician took them, muttered strange words, tapped them thrice with his staff, and before Chike's very eyes, the cowries tripled. Gasps rose from the crowd. Chike himself almost fainted. The magician handed the money back to him. "Bring me more," he said with a sly smile. "Bring me as much as you can find, and I will triple it all."
That is how you will become rich." Chike's heart raced. He saw in his mind his mother smiling, his siblings eating, and himself never having to beg for work again. Without thinking twice, he ran straight to Obina's house. Obina was in his compound, supervising the construction of a massive barn. The walls were rising high, and workers carried mud bricks and wood across the yard. Chike burst in, sweating and breathless. "Chike, my friend, listen. I have found a way for us to become rich beyond measure." Obina frowned. He looked Chike up and down, his fine clothes contrasting sharply with Chike's torn wrapper. "What nonsense are you talking about?" he asked coldly. Chike told him everything: the magician, the cowries, the promise of wealth. His eyes shone with excitement as he spoke. But Obina only laughed. "Ha! Chike, you poor fool. Do you think I have spare money lying around? I have just invested everything in building this grand barn. There is nothing left for your childish dreams." Chike's shoulders dropped. He had hoped his friend would believe him. Sadly, he turned and walked away. But unknown to him, Obina's mind was racing. If what Chike said was true, then I alone will become the richest man in all the land. Why should I share this chance with a beggar like him? That night, while the village slept, Obina gathered every last coin, cowrie, and treasure he owned. At dawn, he hurried to the village square to find the magician. When he arrived, the square was empty. The magician was sitting alone on a stool, tapping his staff against the ground. Obina's heart leapt. Nobody else was there to see him. His secret was safe. The magician looked up slowly, as if he had been expecting him. "Ah, Obina, so you have come. But not now. Return in 2 hours, and your fortune will be ready." Obina nodded eagerly and left, hiding in the nearby bush to wait. 2 hours later, he returned. But this time, the square was empty. The stool was gone. The magician had vanished into thin air. Obina's chest tightened. He looked around frantically. He searched every corner of the square, every nearby path, but the magician was nowhere to be found. The horrible truth sunk in. He had been scammed. And worse still, he had invested everything into the lie. From that day on, Obina's life crumbled. Without money, he could not pay the workers building his barn. They abandoned the project, leaving the half-built structure to rot in the rain. His debts grew, his cattle were sold one by one, his lands were taken by creditors. Within months, the once proud Obina was as poor as Chike, if not poorer. Meanwhile, Chike, though still poor, continued to live with dignity. He worked hard on small farms, shared what little he earned with his family, and never let greed blind his eyes. The people of Umuka never forgot what happened. They whispered about it by the fireside for generations. It was not the magician who ruined Obina. It was his greed. He turned his back on true friendship, and in chasing quick wealth, he lost everything. And so the story of Obina and Chike became a lesson in the village of Umuka and beyond. Moral lesson: true wealth is not found in greed, but in honesty, hard work, and contentment. What other lesson could be found in this story? Comment it below. Don't forget to like, comment, and also subscribe to my channel.